The final reading wrap up of the year has arrived, and I'm so excited to share the 7 books that I read this month. It wasn't a huge reading month for me. I actually ended up DNFing so many books. I don't know what it was, but I just could not get into a lot of the books that I started this month. And I normally hate DNFing books. I think it's such a waste of money. And I also just like to commit to books because you just never know if you'll end up liking them halfway. But I threw all of that out the window this month, and I was like, you know what? If I'm not into this book, why am I going to sit here and torture myself? And I DNF'd so many. Some of them I didn't even like write down, so I forgot half of the books that I DNF'd, but I did write down some because I knew that I was going to absolutely hate these books even if I continued to read them. But let's just jump right in. So I did start the Lords series. I think that's what the series is called, by Chantal Tessier, I think is her last name. So I read The Ritual, which is the first book. Then I read The Sacrifice, which is the third book. And then I DNF'd the fourth book, which is Sabotage. If you're unfamiliar with the Lords series, it is mainly a college dark romance. The books don't take place solely in college. They also take place in their adult lives post-grad. So even though it's a college dark romance series, the entire books don't take place in college. The Lords series basically follows a secret society that controls the world, essentially. That's the most simple way I can explain it. They are a secret, notorious society. They have people in politics and medicine. They're like the 1% billionaires that make everyone else their puppets. It's very dark. It's definitely not a series that I would recommend if you're easily triggered by certain topics. So always look up the trigger warnings for every book that I recommend, but specifically for this one because it is very dark. Starting with the first book, The Ritual, follows a main character who is in college. He's in his senior year. For the first 3 years of college, every Lord member or anyone who aspires to be a Lord has to abstain from sex. And then the senior year, the Lord Society basically allowed them to choose a woman who will be like their pet, their slave, and they can do whatever they want to said woman. They can even let the other members in the society take a pass at her. The main character chooses his chosen, and they embark on a kind of like, I want to say enemies to lovers. The first book was very dark, and I don't agree with anything that went down in the first book, but it was so entertaining that I just did not want to put it down. I wasn't a fan of the romance element, but everything else that went on, like the action, the little secret missions that the main character was set on by the society, was so entertaining, and I just loved learning about the world that the author was building for these characters. But I wasn't a fan of the romance, and it's very heavy on the smut, which is not something that I enjoy reading, especially if it's constantly being brought up. But for the first book specifically, there was so much going on that I could forgive the amount of smut, and I could forgive the romantic elements of it that I was just like, what is going on right now? But for the third book, The Sacrifice, I just could not get over how the male main character treated the female main character. It is a revenge romance. So the male character marries the female main character, and I already forgot their names, I'm not gonna lie. It's like an arranged marriage within the secret society, and he marries her solely to get revenge on her and on her family. The way he treats her is just complete garbage, and then all of a sudden he realizes that he really does love her, and I'm just like, huh? It didn't feel genuine to me. It kind of just happened out of nowhere. I really didn't enjoy it, which made me so sad because the male main character, Tyson, I remembered his name. Tyson actually made an appearance in the first book, and I was so intrigued to learn more about his character because of the way the author set his character up in the first book, and I was so curious to see how his book was going to play out, and it did not play out how I expected it to, and I did not like it. He treated her like a dog, like a pet. I know that she enjoyed it, but it was just so weird to me, and I did not enjoy that book whatsoever. I think I ended up giving it a 2-star rating when I gave the first book, The Ritual, 4 stars. And then I did skip the second book in the series because I was reading reviews and I was reading the trigger warnings, and everyone kept saying how dark this book was. Based on the trigger warnings, I knew that I was just not going to enjoy it, so I decided to skip the second one, and I read the third one. Then I started reading Sabotage, which is the 4th book, and this is another book in the series that I was actually very curious about. I ended up DNFing it 64, 67 pages in because it was just a lot. The smut was not enjoyable whatsoever. The male main character was so obsessive and possessive and very toxic, and you jump to the smut like within the first page of the book. The very first chapter, you're introduced to the smut, and it's the main character, the female main character, getting passed around in a group of men willingly. Like, to each their own. If you find that kind of smut entertaining, good for you. But I was just like, what is going on? And I got to 67 pages and I was like, you know what? This book is just not for me. So I DNF'd it. I did start Carnage, which I think is the 5th book in the series, if I'm not mistaken. I ended up DNFing it as well. I don't even know how far I got into the book. Maybe like 100 pages into the book. I might go back to Carnage to finish it in the new year. I haven't really decided. I was so excited to continue the series after I read The Ritual, but now I'm just so disappointed, and yeah. I thought this series was going to be amazing, and it just was not it. And then we have The Bodyguard by Catherine Senner. I actually just finished this book this morning, and if you're looking for a very cute, sweet, funny, romantic comedy, definitely check out this book. I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars. It follows a female main character named Hannah, and she is basically a bodyguard. The male main character is this famous actor who she is in charge of protecting, but she has to pretend to be his girlfriend in order to protect him because he has to go home and his mom is really sick, and he doesn't want to worry his family by saying there's a threat to my life, here's my bodyguard. So he comes up with the bright idea to fake date her. It's clean, there's no smut whatsoever. It's just such a wholesome read. I almost gave it 5 stars. The only reason I didn't was because the female main character, Hannah, was a tad bit annoying at times. She was very whiny, especially at the very beginning of the book. Like, I get why she was whiny, but also it was just not entertaining for a female main character who was supposed to be this strong ass, badass bodyguard to be as whiny as she was. Even her boss called her out and was like, stop whining, just do your job. That's the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars, but I can't recommend this book enough. I loved the writing, and I can't wait to check out this author's other books. Very cute little romantic comedy that I definitely recommend, and it's the final book that I'm going to read this year, so I'm so glad that I'm ending 2023 with a very cute and good book. Then we have The Wedding Jinx by Becky Monson. I actually read 2 books from her this month. I read The Wedding Jinx, and then I also read How to Ruin the Holidays. Starting with The Wedding Jinx, I gave this book a 3-star rating. It is a workplace romance. It's another very clean, wholesome romantic comedy. The female main character believes that she's a wedding jinx, and every wedding that she's attended, something bad has happened. So she obviously blames herself for those bad things. But her best friend slash co-worker is getting married, and the best friend asks her to be her bridesmaid. She has no choice but to go to another wedding despite swearing them off. She's also always had a crush on her boss, but she really doesn't know if her feelings are legitimate because she's always crushed on her former bosses. So she doesn't really know if this crush is actually legit or if it's just what she does. So she's trying to figure that out throughout the book. Again, a very cute little romantic comedy. The only problem with this book is it was a tad bit slow in certain parts, and I did get bored multiple times, which is why I only gave it 3 stars. But if you are looking for a cute little wholesome, clean romance, I would recommend it. And I fell in love with the author's writing, which is why I checked out another book from her, which is How to Ruin the Holidays, a cute little holiday rom-com that I read specifically since we're in December and it's Christmas season. I ended up giving this book a 3.5. This one felt like I was watching a Hallmark movie. It is a small town holiday romance, and it's kind of Grumpy Sunshine but in reverse, because the female main character is the one that can't stand Christmas. It's not really that she can't stand Christmas, it's that she doesn't want to do Christmas this year. She had a disaster of a Thanksgiving with her family, and she just wants to get away from the holidays and just wants to enter the new year and focus on her career. But her dad tells her that she has to go to a little town and convince them to sell his company some land that is up for auction, and he basically tells his daughter that this is the way that she could prove herself to him and get the promotion that she wants within the family company. So she agrees to go to this small town, which happens to be a town that you would see in a Hallmark movie. And even the main character acknowledges that, and she's basically like, just my luck, of course I want to get away from all Christmassy things, and I am sent to a Christmas town. Male main character is the sunshine, embraces Christmas, loves his small town, loves the residents, his neighbors, his family, and he's determined to show her around and to show her how his town does Christmas. If you are a fan of Christmas Hallmark movies, definitely read this book. It's going to put a smile to your face, and I really enjoyed it. I read 2 more holiday romances. These 2 books are actually part of a Christmas series that came out in November or December, and it's a Christmas series written by 5 different authors, I believe, and they just decided to write the series together. And it's a bunch of short books. The books are not long whatsoever, and they're just Christmas romances. I read the first book in the series, Cabin Crush by Casey Stockton. I ended up giving this book a 3.5. This one revolves a female main character who has always been in love with her brother's best friend. Both families are actually super close, and each year they go to a cabin that they co-own and they spend the whole Christmas week together. But every year the brother's best friend has had a girlfriend, so the female main character has never been able to make a move or let her crush be known, except for this year that they are all stuck in the cabin together. The male main character is actually not in a relationship. I'm normally not a fan of like my best friend's brother or my best friend's little sister trope, but this one was actually super cute. I loved the Christmas setting. I loved how they were in a cabin. They did a bunch of Christmas winter activities. It was just a really cute holiday romance. Short, straight to the point, but still really cute. You get dual POVs, which is also very nice. I will say that it is a slow burn, which is why I gave it a 3.5. It took a while for things to move along between the 2 main characters. So if you like slow burn, then you'll probably enjoy this book. Then I read the second book, or I attempted to read the second book in the series, which was Merry Kismet by Anika R. Walker. I ended up DNFing this book at 24%. The female main character was so whiny. This is a second chance romance. I should have known that I wasn't going to enjoy this book because I really don't like second chance romances. It's very similar to the childhood friends to lovers trope, and I can't do those tropes. I don't know what it is about them, but I just can't stand them. This one revolves around a female main character who a old flame comes back to town, and for some reason she has never been able to get past their relationship, even though he dumped her and broke her heart. With him being back in town for the holidays, she makes it a mission to try to get him back, and she just comes across very whiny because you do get dual POV in this book, and the male main character doesn't want to do anything with the town, and he's very adamant that he just wants to go in, help his mom, and then dip and go back to the city life, which makes me feel sad for the female main character because she is determined to win this guy back despite him being a douchebag to her all those years ago and dumping her. And again, the main character was just so whiny, so desperate that I just could not buy the romance, especially when the male main character was again very adamant that he didn't want anything to do with the town, including her. So I was like, okay, this is just too desperate for me, and I couldn't get through it, so I ended up DNFing it, unfortunately. Another book that I actually ended up DNFing was Ruthless Creatures by J.T. Gessinger, and DNF'd this book at 26%. I honestly can't remember why I DNF'd this book. I know it is a dark mafia romance. I wrote it down on my list. When I was looking at this list this morning, I could not for the life of me remember why I DNF'd this book. It must have been something with the romance, or maybe it was just too dark for me. I don't know, but I ended up DNFing it, so I'm going to mention it. I just can't remember why. And then the final book that I read this month was Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. I don't even know if I need to explain this book because it's been all over BookTube, all over Book Talk. I feel like everyone and their mother has been talking about this book. It is a extremely dark romance. It's actually a stalker dark romance, which I've never read a book where the female main character is stalked by the male main character and they end up falling in love. I did not enjoy the romance of this book whatsoever. I could not see past the red flags. I could not see past what the male main character did to the female main character, especially during the smut scenes. They were just too much for me. I will say that I did enjoy the little murder mystery plot that was going on. I also enjoyed the male main character's like job. His goal was to end human trafficking and to bring those in government who participated in human trafficking down, which I thought was really cool, and I loved that about him. But everything else about him was just not okay, and everything that he did to the female main character was not okay. It gave me Stockholm syndrome. Till this day, I don't know if I loved it or if I hated it, which is why I ended up giving it 3 stars to just meet somewhere in the middle. I still think about this book till this day, not in a good way. Like I'm stuck on the human trafficking. I'm stuck on the final chapters of this book, and it just, I feel traumatized from this book. That's how dark it was. It did end in a huge cliffhanger, and I do want to read the second book for that reason, but I was reading reviews and everyone and their mother had said that the second book is 10 times darker than the first book, and I barely survived the first book, so I don't even know how I'm going to survive the second book, but I do want to read it, so I'm giving myself a break. I'll probably read the second book either in January or February so I can cleanse the first book from my system and then start the second book. I don't know. Those are all the books that I read in December. Let me know in the comments below what books you read this month. Are you ending the year on a good note, or are you ending it on a bad note? I would love to know. And yeah, thank you for coming along this year, for watching all of my reading wrap-ups. I always feel like I'm talking to my friends about books when I do these videos, because we chat in the comments and then you guys tell me what you read. You tell me if you agree or disagree with me. So it's like chatting with friends, and I love it. Thank you for supporting me all year long and for coming along my reading journey. Have a wonderful new year, and I'll see you guys in January. Bye guys.